right, we're going to go ahead and get that thing started there. Good evening, everybody. I can't talk. Good evening, everybody. Hi, it's Jason here with Green Country Agroforestry. I'm looking at the screen and it's a little bit sluggish, and I'm seeing my lips move, but it doesn't sound like my voice is coming from it. So, hi. I see a lot of people are already in the chat, and that's good because tonight, yeah, it's going to be one of those. It's going to be one of those talks that should not be problematic. But because we are going to be approaching adult conversation topics, nothing bad, just simply that the grown-ups have to talk here. We may have people slide in and try to be juvenile, and so mods be alert. There may be people sliding in trying to be juvenile. Other than that, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Green Country Agroforestry. It's 8:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, and yeah, we're going to do something a little bit differently tonight. This is a gardening channel, but it's also a very nature-centric gardening channel where we go and we look at all the parts of the garden, everything, all the plants in it, all the trees on it, all the insects in it, all the birds in it, all the reptiles in it, the amphibians, the mammals, and yes, of course, that means the humans too. The humans are obviously the most important part of our garden plan, and so we got to make sure that the humans are being taken care of properly, and that means we have to understand what the needs of the human being are, particularly, so we can take care of them better. Whenever I'm trying to get an animal into the garden to do work for me, I'm looking for a wild, natural animal to come in and do work for me and to do the things that they do naturally. So I need to provide habitat, shelter, protection for them, someplace where they can live. They need food for themselves, food for their families, for their babies. They're going to raise a family. They're going to have babies. They need to have food for that. Water. They have to have water. Yes. Security, obviously, are our primary needs for the animals, for the creatures that I want in my garden. And so humans, no less, have certain needs that need to be taken care of. So whenever we're looking at designing systems that are going to include humans in them, we need to look at the needs of the human. Particularly the needs that we're going to be talking about now are security needs and particularly social needs when it comes to our interrelationships with other human beings, because obviously there's going to be more than one human interacting in your garden, however big your garden is. Mine is the size of an entire planet. So yeah, I've got certain responsibilities. Saying a real quick hi to everybody. We got Vicky in the house. Hello. Elton Butterfield in early. If he can stop by, he will. He said he might be asleep by now. We'll see. Carolyn's food for us. Carol's in here. Sasspress Bread's in. There we go. If we can't be juvenile, we might have to leave. She says, usually you do pretty good. Vicky said, I'm getting to treasure the non-political videos. And that's really interesting because actually, this is not going to be a political video at all. So if you're coming here looking for Orange Man Bad or Old Man Bad or something of that nature, I don't know what to tell you. There are problems with all of them, and we won't even go there. What we're going to be really looking at is the natural law perspective of things, particularly when we have things like borders, questions of ownership and responsibility. That's all we're really going to talk about. So sit tight. Hello, Chewy Weather. I was planning on doing this talk with Gregory Allison on Greg Greg's and also Swivelhead News, but things are progressing faster than we had thought was going to happen. We'd hoped that there would be more time before we get into this. Sometimes we're just not afforded enough time to do everything we want to do, and so I've got to jump in and rush a little bit. We're going to cover the basics. First off, we have to understand what natural law is, and of course how law is different from legality, because there are people that are discussing things in terms of legality, but we're not going to be discussing things in terms of legality tonight. We'll be discussing terms and things of law. We'll cover legality very, very briefly, and it's almost flip and sort of the thing that you should giggle about, except it's kind of not funny. Hi, Kitty. Hello. All right. So, pardon me. I've got my buddy here. This is he's still got his collar on. This is Bill. Hello, Bill. Bill's still got his collar on. He's going to have his collar on for one more week, and then his stitches will be out, and he can go back outside, back to being a normal wild feral cat. You're not going to be a feral cat, are you? He just gave me this look. Okay. He just gave me this look. All right, for starters, all over the world right now, we see a world in disorder. I'm just going to go ahead and get started, guys. So here we are. We're at 5 minutes in. I said hello. We're going. All over the world, we see a world in disorder. Everywhere we look, right? Everywhere. And I don't have to point any fingers anywhere. You guys have got eyes. You can look. You can see. We have criminals at every level of society, from the lowest dregs of society all the way to the top, the highest level of society. We see it overseas. We see it in the corners. We see it in the streets. We see it everywhere. Criminals are running rampant, right? That's what we see. So the solution to our problems will not be more criminal behavior. That's what got us in this mess in the process. So we have to start learning how to behave lawfully. That begins here, and it begins up here. It begins in the minds of the individual. It's not something that you can impose upon society with violent force. Actually, the violent force came in with the crime. So throw those ideas out of your head. We're not going to be talking about revolution. We're going, well, okay, we'll be talking about a revolution of the mind, and maybe a revolution of the heart, but not one of the body, which is interesting considering the clothing I'm wearing. If you guys may notice, this shirt here says GM on it. It doesn't stand for General Motors. It stands for Gunner's Mate. Mary got me this shirt. It was a little small whenever she got it, but I'm starting to get my belly back the way it's supposed to be. So now it just looks a little bit tight in the chest, and that's about it. So GM stands for Gunner's Mate. For a while there, in the the 90s, the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, I was an employee of the United States federal government for the Department of Defense, particularly in the Department of the Navy, as a gunner's mate on board the United States ship Missouri BB-63 USS Missouri BB-63, and I got claws in my leg. Hi, kitty. That took me to some very interesting places in the world at a very interesting time, and kind of forced me to do some confrontation of what I thought and what I believed. I didn't really know exactly what to think about the entire. I guess I'm going to have a laugh cat, guys. Sorry, we have a laugh cat. All right, we got a laugh cat. It really caused a confrontation of my basic fundamental values. I didn't know what to think about a lot of things for a while there. When I got out of the Navy, I thought, I think I've had enough of this. I'm just going to go homestead. I don't want to get involved in any of this. I want to walk off into the woods. Is really what I wanted to do. This is too much, because I could tell there were things that were fundamentally wrong. I just couldn't really figure out what in the world to do about any of it. But the more I've looked at it, I've begun to figure out what the fundamental problems are, the reason why we keep on upon having these issues over and over again. And it does have to do with law, lawfulness, and of course, the natural law. So let's get started really, really quick here. I've got a program I've got to pull up on my screen so I can look at it, so I just won't lose my place. And that is not the right paper. There we go. I've got two. One is the book. My apologies. One is the book, and the other is this outline that I've been working on, which is for tonight's presentation. All right. So, for starters, no unlawful behavior. Let's get that out of the way right now. Now, number two, we need to define our terms properly, because so many times we can hide meanings of words in vagaries of definition. We've gotten into the habit of calling the person that empties out the garbage. He isn't the garbage man. That's the sanitation engineer, right? Oh, it sounds better. But when we start coming up with new and inventive ways to refer to things, euphemisms, terms, hiding what we say under vague speech, those expansions and contractions of what words mean are lives, entire lives, that can be saved or lost with just the interpretation of a word. So we need to be careful whenever we're defining our terms, whenever we're talking about things. trying to be rational adults and talk about things, we need to know what we're talking about. I'm going to start out first off by saying, and this is kind of the shock clickbait type claim. If anybody is doing this, and by the way, you can cut and clip and replay portions of this live stream later if you like. I don't know if you're going to want to, because we've got Bilbo here photobombing, but the shock and clickbait term that we're going to use is man cannot create law, right? And for somebody that's involved in physical sciences, this is actually not an unusual statement. You've heard it before, and you're very familiar with it, because what we think of in the terms of physical sciences laws are just that. They're things that can be observed in nature, principles observed in nature. They're not subject to dictate, and they're immutable. You can't violate a law of nature. So the law of nature is something that we can look at, we can observe, we can go, we can describe it. We say, this is how it is, or this is how it seems to work. Whenever I have an object in motion, it tends to remain in motion. An object at rest tends to remain at rest. This is thermodynamics. Unless acted upon by an outside force, gravitational pull being a course of force. If I take this pecan and I drop it, yeah, it's gonna fall. It's gonna fall down, and it wouldn't matter. It's on the floor. I could pick up another nut, and I could drop it. Well, how about if I just left it float right here in midair? No, it falls every single time, and it wouldn't matter, would it? If I got every single physicist on the planet to get together in conference and agree that whenever I let go of this pecan, that the law of thermodynamics is not going to affect it, and it will just remain floating right here, and the force of gravity will not affect it. We'll decide that that's just not going to happen. No, I cannot get enough physicists together to say that this pecan is going to remain in midair when I let go of it. It's going to fall every time. Why is that? Because this is a law. It's not a suggestion. It's not a rule. It's a law. And laws, well, they can be described, but they can't be dictated. And there's nothing I can really do about a law of nature except acknowledge its existence and then make my plans around what the reality is, right? That's a law. And of course, that's the difference between laws and rules. And whenever we start using our words to say these rules that we made are laws, what are we doing? Well, we're creating this idea in the back of our head that, well, it's a law, it can't be violated, right? So this is a way of programming the mind to think of a thing as being different from what it really is. All right, moving on. Another term that we're going to use is called agency. Occasionally, you may hear this term being used by somebody, and they're going to say, we want to give somebody agency. We want to give the children agency. And this sounds wonderful. It sounds like freedom. The political definition of agency is the ability to act. In practice, it means the ability to make a choice. It doesn't mean the ability to imagine and create choices up here. A whole bunch of choices just suddenly appear because I imagine, oh, you could do this, 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 and this, and this. The person imagining. No, it is when the person is given a set of choices. You can choose from this, this, or this. You have a limited set of choices. You can choose, you can act, you have agency. It's not the same thing as freedom. Sounds an awful lot like it. In practice, very, very different. Because here's the thing. The person who's creating the choices and presenting the choices, that's the person with what is called power. Power, the ability to present, to create and present choices to people, right? That's what power is. Freedom is the ability to create those choices for yourself, not just to make the choices, but to create them as well. Very, very important that you know the difference between agency and freedom and what power really is. Power is the ability to create choices. Power is the ability to create choices. Power is the ability to create choices. If you're standing here in the universe, the nascent universe, just beginning, here you are, you're standing here, everything that could possibly happen in the vast cosmos before you, everything possible that could happen, hasn't happened yet. And you are sitting here in a position to make any choices you want as to how this universe is going to expand and how it's going to look. Any choices you possibly want. And when you make these choices, if you yourself are not affected by the consequences of those choices, guess what you are? You're a god. Nobody is in that position if you're living in this reality. If you're living in this reality, whenever you make a choice, when you imagine something, you go, oh, I could do this. And you create the choice and you act on it. You're creating a world. That's the power that you have as human beings. Congratulations. Woohoo. You were given this by your creator. You have the ability to create not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. You're creating a shared reality. We all have to go along for the ride, which is why being responsible is so, so, so very important. Whenever you are imagining and creating and acting, making choices, you're manufacturing worlds constantly, every moment, every second. What your mind state is, what you're thinking, and what you're acting upon is shaping the world around you. You are doing that. It's you. You're the responsible party. You're the observer. You're the interactor. You're the person who has the hands that are manipulating the world around you to create the world you're experiencing. It's you. It's you. Well, yeah, it's me too. But it's you. You. Everything. It's all you. It's all choice. It's all consequence. And it's all you. This is it. You're free. Absolutely free. It's all choice and consequence. Got it? Everything. Everything. No, I mean everything. Here we go. All right. So, in order to empower the powerless, and I know a lot of people feel that they're just powerless right now. It's like, what in the world? All this stuff is going on. All this, what do I do about it? Where do I fit into it? What can I do? I can't do anything. I'm powerless. I'm just this one little person, this one little unit, right? Hey, guess what? Our civilization is built upon that unit. So take heart. You're exactly where you need to be. You have exactly the amount of power that you need, because in order to empower the powerless, we're going to have to give you a tool. Now, the best tool that we can give you is going to be the truth. All right. We're going to teach you how to use truth. We're going to show you how to find truth and how to employ it, how to align it, and why it is such an effective tool. And really quick, guys, before we get too much further, could you reach down there and click on that thumbs up bell? You may find this information useful. If you don't, somebody else just might. And one of the only ways it's ever going to get out there is if the algorithm says, hey, maybe somebody should watch this stuff. So do your best. See if you can maybe let people know that there's some alternatives to stupidity out there. And of course, what we're going to get into is real freedom, real power, and how to exercise it. So strap in. Here we go. Before I get any further, I'm going to jump over here, just say hi to everybody real quick. We're here at this point where we're talking about truth and what truth and the fundamental nature of truth is. That's going to be fun. So anyway, John's in the house. Hello. I love that one. John says, I am not subjected to anybody's reality but my own. There we go. So there's going to be a lot of okay. I'm just going back through comments really quick here and checking to see where everybody's at. Yay! Okay, people are talking about gardening awesomeness. Breathe in, breathe out. Imagine world peace. There you go. Remember all this stuff, right? Pray, act, work in a peaceful way. Well, and most specifically, we're gonna be talking about in a lawful way. So we're gonna have to talk about how you know what is lawful, and it is very, very easy. It's something that very, very long texts have been written about, and people wax philosophical about it and go into deep depths. But fundamentally, it's pretty simple. It really is. All right. So when was this? Guys, correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is like 1642, somewhere about. I think it was 1642. Sir Thomas More, upon the occasion of being, well, about to be executed for treason, he was the chancellor for the King of England. The king had decided that he wanted to be the head of the church, and Thomas More was asked if it was he was in agreement that the king was the head of the church in England. And of course, the chancellor was the deacon of Canterbury or something like this. So he was basically the high religious figure in England at the time, and More does not agree that the king should be the head of the church in England, because the church already has a head and it's not the King of England. So More makes his argument whenever he's at trial, and he says there's much talk being made in the world these days, and I'm paraphrasing. I'm not even sure if I got the date right. The people who are in mods, it's like double check my I didn't put this in show notes. I just put a little footnote that said Thomas More discussion here, so that's where we're at. Thomas said there's much talk in the world these days about whether the earth is round or whether it's flat. But I ask you, if it is flat, could an act of parliament make it round? And if it's round, could the word of the king flatten it? And after saying this, and after some other discussion, Thomas More was taken and executed, because, of course, the king got to do whatever he wanted to because he was using force, not reason. Thomas More was attempting to use reason, and reason, of course, didn't win that particular day. But we still hear those words down to this point in history and say, wait a minute, yeah, there are certain fundamental truths, some certain fundamental realities, and it doesn't matter how much we want things to be different, they just are, and you have to come to grips with the basic reality of what life is, and what nature is, and what this existence is that we're living here. Natural beings, all like this kitty here. Hi. I know he doesn't look like a natural being with a cone on his head, but we're trying. We're trying. Sir, don't use your claws. Don't use your claws. Gently. Thank you, sir. Gently. Okay, there you go. There you go. All right. All right. So, in order to get out of this conundrum of the dictative kings, right? What do we do if we want to get out of this conundrum of the dictative kings? We need to understand where law comes from, so we can find out if there is such a thing as a fount of law that comes from nature. So let's look at this. Let's look at the needs of the human being. We can boil this down to a simple set of rules, and they are, once again, they're rules, they're not laws, because of course they can be violated, but they're suggested by the needs of the natural human. Let's describe those for a moment. Can you imagine for a moment anyone out there, and I'm being assaulted by another kitty down here, pardon me, Betty. Hi, Betty. We have the rambunctious one. Can you imagine any human being that would want to be murdered? That's kind of a strange thing to ask. Of course, the term murder implies no consent, correct? So no, I mean, nobody's going to say, yeah, I want to be murdered, because if you would, it's not murder, it would be something else. We got a different word for that. So no, nobody wants to be murdered. How about assaulted? There are different types of assault. Some of them are quite graphic, and I'd rather not get into any detail because, small ears and everything. This is not necessarily entirely a family channel, but I would like to think that people could walk in, or their children could walk in and say, hey, Ma, I've got a question about my math homework, and they don't hear something that's outraging, that's so outrageous that you're going to have a long conversation with Junior about it later. So imagine, whenever I say assault, we are talking about everything from a balled up fist to the face to things even more heinous. No one wants to be assaulted. I don't want to be assaulted. I can't imagine anyone out there wanting to be assaulted. As a matter of fact, the term assault itself applies no consent, non-consensual behavior. Sure, a couple people can decide, hey, we're going to get into a fight, hop into a ring, the crowd pays money to watch them fight, and it's consensual and it's perfectly acceptable, normal, ordinary behavior. Yes, violent, but still consensual and therefore lawful. All right. Finally, nobody wants to be robbed. Nobody wants to be the victim of theft. Of course, theft indicates that the taking was done without lawful recourse. If you look at the Webster's dictionary version of theft, though, it describes theft in legal terms, and there's a difference between legal and lawful. Legal in this sense means that the taking of property was done without a legal right. And so I had to go look in dictionaries to see what this is. Okay, what's the difference between lawful and legal? Well, lawful, of course, means within the boundaries of these restrictions that we just described. No murder, no robbery, no theft. That's it. All the human beings on planet Earth, and as far as I know, if we encounter human beings from some other planet, have as their fundamental basic requirements for security that they not be murdered, they not be assaulted, and they not be robbed. It's kind of basic to having a functioning society. I can't be in a functioning society if I can't trust the other members of it to not murder me, to not assault me, and to not rob me. This seems self-explanatory. It didn't require a king. It didn't require a holy man. It didn't require a bunch of people getting together in a room to talk amongst yourselves. Do you think this is? You think this is right? I don't know. Maybe. Well, how about we make an allowance over here? How about if I live? None of that. None of that. You can look and you can see it yourself. Yes. Is it self-evident? Revealed in nature? Not dictated. The only thing I've done is gone, hey, did you notice this? It was right here. Right? I've described it, but I haven't dictated it. All right. So this is natural law. Now that we know what natural law is, you go, okay, well, hang on a second. What about enforcement, right? What's the enforcement of natural law? We know what the offenses are because we go, okay, that would be an offense. I don't think I'd like to have anybody do that to me. So I don't do that to other people, and they don't do that to me. And we have a society that functions. But what happens whenever somebody's not respecting the rules? And of course, this is where we have people that come and make rulings, right? We go, oh, what do you think is the appropriate response when somebody does X, Y, or Z, right? Some violation of the rules. And typically, if there wasn't somebody who said, I have decreed, here's a list of the things that are going to happen if you rob, or if you assault, or this kind of assault, or if you murder, or this kind of murder. Even without that stuff, we kind of understand that there are supposed to be consequences to actions. But how do we know what that is? This is why people crave law, right? They crave somebody to write it down so you know what to expect. Well, realistically speaking, it's the limit of what you feel confident doing in self-defense or in retaliation, and also tempered by what your neighbors think about it. Because you may say, well, it doesn't matter what my neighbors think. Well, it does, because you have to live with them. You do. Either you have to live with them, or you got to pack up and move, or you got to get rid of them, and then you're violating natural law. So if you're going to be living lawfully, yes, you do have to get along with your neighbors. So that's sort of baked into the cake. The degree to which we take things. If you can't read the room, then yeah, maybe you better have a set of rules written down on a piece of paper by somebody that's got their act together, where you don't. That might become in handy if you don't have the ability to figure out what an appropriate response to an offense is. Maybe you should go with a rule book that'll teach you. Otherwise, yeah, the society is going to show you really quick. Here we go. We need to know what authority is, because once again, we need to know if there are people who are making rules, whether they should be making rules. How do I know whether an authority is a just authority or not, or whether it's just authority? So Chairman Mao, you guys know him, lovely fellow, wrote a book of sayings that I've got up on the shelf behind me. We're not going to break it down here, but he has this saying in here that says that generally power comes from the barrel of a gun. Very, very dismal, dark look upon humanity. And I take exception. I take exception because, of course, he's talking about power, but also what he really means is authority. And you can take authority with violent force and with the threat of violent force. Absolutely. And it's has been done for thousands and thousands of years on this planet. But we all know that since it's done in violation of natural law, it's not just authority, but it is authority coming from the barrel of the gun. It's coming from, I have violent force. I will use violent force unless you do what I say. You're going to do what I say. Well, it's not just. Is there such a thing as a just authority? Now, I've got people out there that are in the anarchist community that I'm in communication with on a regular basis say, no, there can't be such a thing as just authority. But I kind of kick this thought around for a bit and say, oh, is there not? What's the truth of the matter? Remember, we want to have as fine a blade as possible, right? Because we have this blade. We're going to call it truth. So we're going to use some chipping techniques, get some of the crud off of that, get a fine edge on it. We're going to chip it sharp, right? One molecule thick and irreducible. We want it to be irreducible because if our edge of our blade can't be broken whenever it's cutting, then it will cut true and divide what is reality from what is false. All we need to do is align ourselves with truth and stay on this side of reality and push the part that's false over here to the side and go, look, that's fake stuff. We live in reality. We live in the real world. Here in the real world, according to our understanding of natural law, there are certain things that are very, very easy to determine once you start looking through this through looking at things with clarity. I don't want to be murdered. You don't want to be murdered. I don't want to be assaulted. You don't want to be assaulted. I don't want to be robbed. You don't want to be robbed. This is universal. We know the law. So going forward, we can't break the law to try to advance what we would like to happen. Then we would be unlawful, right? So no unlawful behavior. And we need to look at the question of authority and say, okay, what's just authority and what's not just authority? Because that's kind of where the question is popping up right now in a lot of people's minds. What's just authority? What's not just authority? All right. So authority is the person that can make rules. And if it's just authority, it's a person that has a claim, a legitimate claim under the natural law to make rules. How in the world can you have such a person? Who would have the ability, the authority, the power to make rules? Well, it's going to start out, and this is interesting, and I'll explain. At first, I thought it was ownership, and I had some time to think about it, and I realized ownership is related, but it isn't ownership. You'll love this one. It's responsibility. And here's how it works. I own me. You own you. We kind of think that that's the way things are, right? We think that we're human beings, we own ourselves. Human beings can't be property. We abolish slavery. Man can't be somebody else's property. Got it. Everybody owns themselves. Okay. If everybody owns themselves, then there's some things that we need to think about. Along with ownership of property, I own myself, is the responsibility. I'm responsible for myself. I have to maintain everything that this being requires to live. I've got to make sure that it has food, it has water, it has shelter, it has security, right? I'm the responsible party. I'm the owner. I'm the responsible one. All the responsibility. Also, this means all the authority, because the authority and the responsibility go hand in hand. The ownership was what attached the responsibility to you. The responsibility was attached by ownership, but you can be responsible without owning. In the case of, for example, having a child, as a parent, do you own your children? Now, you might think in one strict sense, yes, they're my children, I own them, but no, you really don't. You don't own your children, because your children are a human being with the rights of a human being, and they own themselves. However, whenever they're young, they're not responsible for themselves because you haven't taught them how to be responsible yet. And a lot of you are running around out there right now, ages 18 and up, you haven't learned how to be responsible for yourself yet either. I'm sad to say there are a lot of people who are grown up adult children, and a lot of you are in positions of power and authority right now. And it's really easy to get overwhelmed, and I understand it is. It's easy to get overwhelmed. Nobody ever taught you how to be self-responsible. And now you're in this position where they go, well, now you have power, right? And here's a weapon, even worse. And now they're saying, well, you're going to have to follow these orders. And you're going, well, whose orders am I supposed to follow? Who's got the just authority? I can follow my chain of command and be legal. And that's generally what people are going to do, right? They're going to follow their chain of commands, and they're going to be legal, because if they're legal, at least they're not going to get in trouble with their own chain of commands. Are they going to get in trouble with humanity? Because humanity itself, the broad humanity, actually works off of natural law. When you're operating on the international stage, for example, if you're operating as the United States of America, you're an entity on the world stage, an actor on the world stage. if you were another sovereign entity acting on the world stage, you have equal status, theoretically, under natural law with the United States. Not necessarily equal with the ability to do violence, but as far as natural law and natural rights go, every nation has equal status under natural law. And as far as ability to do violence goes, pretty much every nation has similar capabilities. There are a lot of vulnerabilities that the United States and any other large developed country has that some other places that are smaller might not necessarily have. And having nuclear weapons is not a guarantee that you're going to win the arms race anymore. Unfortunately, the asymmetric warfare is actually to take advantage of the instabilities inherent within a civilization and implode it in on itself. And that can be done with remarkably few people. And there's really only one effective remedy or defense against it. And that is what we're talking about tonight. So it's very important you get this and understand what we're talking about. Natural law is important. The individual unit of civilization is important. You are important because the person that has to, the primary responsibility for observation of natural law is the individual. I have to observe it for myself. You have to observe it for yourself, et cetera, so on and so forth. Second to that is enforcement. And the easiest way to enforce natural law is whenever you see somebody that's in your peer group getting ready to do something that's unlawful, kindly remind them it's not lawful and ask them to kindly maybe take a moment to engage their imaginations and create a new choice that does not include violating natural law. And maybe you can accomplish your objectives without violating natural law if you use your imagination and you create another choice, because that's the power that you have, the power of creation. You're going to create a world where you don't have to violate the law in order to get what you want done. Unless, of course, what you want done is just completely impossible and you can't do it, then, hey, you probably can't do it. And there are a lot of things that are like that. Sometimes you just can't do something because it's not doable, at least not without violating the law and being a criminal. And you don't want to do that. So don't do that. All right. This gets us kind of to the point where we now want to find out what the rules are for property, right? We know that the individual owns themselves, but what about physical property? Physical property, like, for example, this container of forest fruit jam that my daughter sent to me. I'm presuming this is my jam, right? It probably is. I think this is my jam. I mean, she sent it to me. Nobody else has made claim to it. It's here. It's in my possession. So I'm gonna assume it's mine. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell, right? Who owns what property? Generally speaking, I would say that whatever is the product of my mind and the labor of my hands, taken from raw nature and elevated to art or usefulness as a tool or commodity or purpose, provided that nobody else had a claim to it in nature, right? Or provided nobody else had a claim to the labor of my hands, assuming that, I have not contracted that out to someone else. I mean, if somebody says, I'm going to give you 4 of these gold backs, these little one thousandth of an ounce of gold in a little cellophane sandwich, gold backs. I'll give you 4 of those in exchange for working for me for an hour. And I go, okay, fine. Yeah, I could use some trade currency, or maybe they're using Federal Reserve notes. It doesn't matter what they're using. If I think that the thing they're offering is worth my time, then I'll go, yeah, I'll take that deal and I'll contract my labor out to this person who's going to give me the unit of exchange in exchange for the labor that I had. So I have sold my labor. And I contracted ahead of time to sell my labor to the employer. So obviously there's no, wait a minute, if he goes and he takes the stuff that the product of my labor and he sells it for more than what he gave me, I'm not entitled to a piece of that because I didn't contract for that. It's not mine, it's his. That's the genius of his mind and the work of his hands and the thing that he did. And if it's more than what I got, then I can go, wow, I need to learn how to do what he's doing so that I can take this little bit of work and turn it into that much more money and I can be more successful instead of going, oh, I want a piece of what he's got. So you don't want to do what the socialists are doing, because after the fact, ex post facto, going, well, I want more. That doesn't, no, natural law doesn't work that way. You own what you create and you own what you work for. You own what you bargain for, right? How about property? And this is, of course, this is going to, how long are we in? We're about half an hour in. maybe past half hour. Great, because we're going to get up to this concept of property rights, who owns what, who's the just authority. If I happen to be coming up to an area that I'm thinking about settling, I would like to, I'd like to set up a house, maybe a business, something. I'm looking at this area. Wow, there's all this land over here. There's all these people here too. There's land, people, land. There's a space over here, but I don't see any people. Maybe I can live there. I'll go ask, right? Hey, pardon me. Is anybody living here? Is anybody living here? Is anybody living here? First, good question. Is anybody living here? Find out if it's owned. Somebody says no. Somebody says no. All the neighbors say no. Nobody's like, would anybody mind if I lived here? Ask around. This neighbor, that there, that neighbor, that there. And maybe they have some conditions. Well, we don't mind, but you got to know we do things a little bit differently around it. Okay, I'd like to know what the local customs are so I can fit in, right? Maybe I'm not going to, maybe once I hear the local customs, I'm not going to want to live here, right? Maybe you should better tell me, if you guys are into cannibalism or something weird, rituals stuff. No. Ordinary rules. Don't play the music too loud. Oh, okay. So be civil. Okay, cool. I'm familiar with civil conduct. I know natural law. So I can move into a neighborhood almost anywhere, provided, of course, I can communicate with the people in the neighborhood. It's okay with them if I live here. Nobody else lives that spot. Somebody may have, conditionally, I own that property, but if you want to live there, you can pay me to take over ownership of the property, right? But, okay. Right. So who owns that property? If I come here and somebody says, well, I own it. Oh, you own it. Okay. Somebody else says they own it. Now I have two people that say they own the same piece of property. That's confusing. I can't buy this piece of property, obviously, because two people own it. It's apparently owned by somebody, not owned by me. I just got here. But I've got person over here and person over there, and both of them say that property is theirs. Clearly, I cannot settle here because either they own it, or maybe they're both right, but in either case, I know it's not mine. Because the a priori occupation is the evidence that somebody owns that piece of property. I get here and go, pardon me, who lives here? I do. Oh, you do. You must be the property owner. You live here. Yes. Ah, okay. I understand that. You're the property owner. You live here. Oh, I understand. Now, here's the important thing. When it comes to property on the North American continent, there are places, for example, in Pennsylvania, where somebody came over from Europe and arrived and said, who owns this land? All right. And we're talking, of course, about William Penn here, which is the reason why I've said, if they don't want a statue in Pennsylvania, I will find out what it costs. And I am completely serious about this, guys. So if somebody will look up, see what it's going to cost. We will do what we have to. Start a GoFundMe or something, but I'll pay to have it shipped to set up here in Oklahoma, because Penn deserves to be honored for what he did. He was lawful. He said, okay, look, I've come to this piece of property. I and my people, we want to settle here. We want to live here. We want to be good neighbors, but we have, two people here that make a claim to the property. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to this party and say, how much would you like to transfer your interest, your ownership of this property to us? Get a number from him. And go to the other part. Now, how much would you like to sell your interest in this property to us? Get a number? Okay. And we'll pay you, and we'll pay you. Now, everybody, the neighbors, everybody who has had an interest or a claim in the property has been paid. We're going to assume ownership of the property. Third party pops up and goes, hey, what about us? We have a claim to the property too. And I hear it was more than just three too. But Penn goes, okay, fine. Here, we will pay you for the property too. We are going to make sure that all of the neighbors, everyone around here, is okay with us owning and occupying this piece of property. And so, yeah, he paid the price for it. He paid for it several times over, but he purchased the property, which is now Pennsylvania, lawfully. As opposed to some other situations where we have, and this is natural law occupation and not necessarily a violation. So this is where it gets a little bit murky, right? Because tribesfolk in North America prior to Europeans showing up, they didn't have the same concept of property rights that Europeans brought with them. A thing was yours because you worked for it. A thing was yours because you traded for it. A thing was yours because it was your property because you lived there. If nobody lives there and nobody objects to you living there, you can live there and then it's yours. But whenever you're not there, anymore is not yours. It goes back to nature. So the idea of can I live over here is like, sure, yeah. Are you going to be a good neighbor? Oh, I heard you gave those guys down there beads. You're going to give us beads. We like beads. But the concept of, well, I am going to own this property now. This property is going to be mine. It's not going to be yours. It's going to be mine forever. It's going to belong to whoever I decide is going to get it forever. And if I happen to go away and never come back here, this piece of property will sit here empty and unused and untouched by anyone legally forever. This is a weird concept for natives because we operate off of natural law. And, I'm a Native American. I was born here in North America. So I'm a Native American. I'm also a little bit tribal. But once again, for people operating on natural law, it's weird. This concept of abstract property rights is weird, strange. I'm not saying it doesn't have its merits. I mean, for right now, we got an abstract office here in Tulsa, and if things went weird all of a sudden, and we had any question about who owned a parcel of property, we might actually still keep using that abstract office. Go down there, have a look at the survey plats, and go, okay, this was purchased by so-and-so, that was purchased by so-and-so, and this company over here has a lien on it. So these people want money, these people want money, and these people want money. But if you pay off all these people or make an agreement with them, then yeah, that's your property. Cool. And we can do that because it's a lot easier than all the neighbors keeping track and going, who was it? Ethel, do you remember who owned the Johnson place over there? The Johnson place. No, not the Waymeyers. They're the ones who bought it after. Yeah, who owns it now? Oh, I don't remember. Do you see how bad that can be? Right. So we have this place where you keep records, and you can always go and pay a little bit of money to the person who keeps the records. Go, oh yeah, look, see, we keep the memory of the community here for you. It's very convenient. Now, people can be free, of course, absent, I guess, any other authority to dispute those claims and figure out how they're going to do it. And you know what? Given them freedom and given their dedication to observation and enforcement of natural law, especially with a community that reinforces that around them, I'm actually fairly confident they're going to come up with a solution that can get this accomplished without gross physical violence. Because, the other natural beings out there in the world, they've got the teeth, the claw, the hiss, and the growl, and the occasional scuffle. Human beings have communication. So we have much, much better tools to communicate things like property ownership and who is the responsible party, who has just authority. Obviously, the person who is the property owner has the just authority as to what goes on their property. So let's come race around to Texas, right? Going to bring us around to Texas. I don't have my show notes. I think it was around, I want to say around 1803. If I'm not mistaken. 1803 is about the year that, and it was so it was Jefferson administration. See if I can remember how this went down. The Jefferson administration entered into an agreement with the nation of France to contract to purchase, and I can't remember what the exact amount was. It was cheap. The Louisiana Purchase. Oh yeah, we do need to talk about this too, because it's not just Texas, it's also Alaska. Because Vladimir was talking about Alaska and making some comments. You guys remember that, right? Vladimir talking about, I don't think that the sale of Alaska was legal. Well, it wasn't lawful. And the reason it wasn't lawful is because it didn't belong to the Tsar in the first place. He didn't own it. He couldn't sell it. What he did sell is different. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about, is what was being sold. It wasn't the property. It can't be the property because the nation doesn't lawfully own it. I'll explain why. Remember, once again, when the colonists arrived here, they were saying, can I live here? It's not the same thing as can I buy this property from you? In the case of Pennsylvania, they did. Some other places they didn't. And in some places, they took possession of property completely and totally unlawfully with the use of violent force. That would be conquest. Conquest is not lawful, incidentally. So we say, I got it by the right of conquest. You stole it. That's what it means. You stole it. That is literally stolen land is what it means. And I'm not saying that we need to do like Native American reparations or anything. It is so convoluted right now. I don't know who you would go and swipe land from. You would just be committing more and more unlawful offenses against human beings that do not deserve it, trying to correct this problem. So the best thing we could possibly do is go back to the original natural law definition, which is, hey, look, I came to this land, I found a person living on it. The person who's living on this land, it must be, absent any other evidence to the contrary, the property owner, right? So if you're the property owner, you're the responsible party. That means that you have the authority to decide what goes on your property. Are you following along with it so far? What was purchased in the Louisiana purchase? What was purchased with the Alaska purchase? What was purchased or what was settled on following the American-Mexican War, where America gained the jurisdiction, shall we say, over certain parts of the American Southwest, including Texas, from Mexico. It was settlement with Mexico to not dispute these border lines anymore. Once again, the Louisiana Purchase was an agreement. We were purchasing the United States. I keep on saying we. The United States of America, purchased the rights to shepherd this particular set of territory and to make agreements with its citizens and the people who were the residents who owned the property there in these territories for any other future exchanges of property ownership. So they were not buying the property. They were purchasing the rights to have this area uncontested by any other nation state. That's what they're buying. The right to have this area not contested by any nation state, because they were getting it from, the United States is getting it from France. Where did France get it from? Got it from Spain. How did Spain get it? Spain got it this way. A guy from Spain lands here, walks around, goes, yeah, it's a nice place. It's cool mountains. I like those beaches. The people here are cool. I love the people here. The people are awesome. I love the people here. I am claiming this land for my nation. That's what they did, right? I'm claiming this land. So you may not know this, and this is the legal part. You may not know this, but several years ago, and it's been decades now, like we're going back as far back as MySpace, for Pete's sake. I got this wild idea that I was going to follow the legal rules for establishing a claim to territory. I mean, if the nations can do it, and I looked at the Declaration of Independence, and it said, shoot, that we, the people of the United States of America, assume to ourselves the responsibility and authority of nations. Like, oh, okay, in that case. And I published, and I said, having found this planet suitable to my liking, to my needs, and have spent considerable amount of time wandering to and fro on it and establishing a residence here, I've decided that this is my planet. I am the emperor of Earth. It is my property, all of it. Everyone on it and everything in it belongs to me. And I published this. I also stated at the time of publishing that all of my subjects are on their own recognizance, completely responsible and accountable for themselves and their own actions. I will levy no taxes. I will raise no army, and I will pass no other decrees. That's it. You are all free, legally speaking. I also can't claim the title of emperor because I'm technically a U.S. citizen. I can't claim the title, but I am emperor, in fact, and you are all free. Everyone, all 7.88 billion of you on planet Earth, you're all free, legally speaking. John's saying, how am I going to enforce this? You're my subjects. The law's in you. The law's in you. You're 100% responsible. You're free. You own yourself. What else can I tell you? You're legally speaking, you're free. If you weren't free by natural law already, you're now legally free. Well, you were already, but you've been free for years. Legally speaking, you've been free for years. You know, during this entire time since I've done that publishing, I've published in multiple publications. At least one of them Mark Zuckerberg was aware of and he took down, so he knows. If he knows, the jokers at Davos know. And they go, oh, Avers. Okay, well, that makes sense. It'll make sense if you go take a look at Switzerland, because Avers is not far from Davos. They're related, not closely. We haven't had contact with them since the 1700s. We kind of went a different way. I went natural law. They went legal. That's all. But they like legal because legal keeps people enslaved. Natural law sets people free. You're all free. Okay, now here's the question. What do we do about Texas, right? Oh, and once again, Alaska. See, the Tsar never owned Alaska. The people who live in Alaska, they owned Alaska. They still own Alaska. Everybody who lives there owns Alaska. Alaska belongs to the Alaskans. That's who the owner is, right? That's who the owner is. The territorial rights that we're talking about, that's an agreement amongst nations. As to, we are going to respect these boundaries and we're not going, that's what that's for. That's what applies in the Louisiana Purchase. That is what applies at the territories that the territories that are gained by right of conquest. Lawful ownership is really dependent upon the residents. In actuality, the people who live there. That's who's lawfully in charge. Now we have the question of, well, who's the responsible party? Who has the just authority, right? Because right now we've got Texas National Guard and we've got U.S. federal forces, and there's a border here, right? There's this line that's the border of Texas. There's a line that's the border of the United States of America. This border exists because these political groups, organizations, came to agreements as to who was the responsible party for maintaining that border. Who is the responsible party, right? Well, here's the thing. Absent of any other responsible party, whenever there's a conflict as to whoever is in charge, the natural law answer is very simple. Whoever the responsible party is that steps up and assumes the responsibility is the just authority. It doesn't matter. If it was that kid over there that went, wait, we've got to do something about this. Guys, just gather together. Let's do that kid just became the just authority. It could be a little kid. It could be an 8-year-old who is the just authority. Because why? They assume the responsibility. They become the responsible party, right? So the question right now is, well, who's the responsible authority on the border with Texas? If it is Texas, then Texas is the just authority. If it's going to be the United States, then the United States is going to have to assume some responsibility that the United States has not been willing to assume. So there you are. That's the natural law perspective. And once again, if you guys are thinking about heading down to Texas to visit, it's a beautiful state. It's a bit warmer down there this time of year than it may be up north and back east where you're used to. Enjoy your trip through the Great Plains if you're passing through Oklahoma. Remember to drive by during the day, slow down, see some of the sights. I mean, it is winter and it's not at its prettiest right now, but we have lots of wonderful things to look at through here and wonderful people to visit with. Remember to be respectful. Remember to be lawful. Try to stay out of the way of the people who are working down at the border. And that's about all I've got for you tonight. Wow, we filled up an hour pretty good. Yeah, stay home for the most part, guys. Just stay home. I mean, I know you want to come out and you want to visit and you want to show your support and all that. So please be respectful. Don't lay your trash in Oklahoma. We don't really appreciate people throwing trash out the windows. We have trash receptacles placed very, very regularly at the rest stops and the filling stations. Please make use of them. There we go. But yeah, enjoy your visit. Hopefully everything is going to be fairly normal going forward. Mary is still driving her truck. She's going to be heading down to Texas here pretty soon. She's not going down to protest. She's going down to make sure that whenever you go to the grocery store, your groceries are on the shelf. So there you go. We're going to try to make it business as usual as much as possible. And we're going to try to make sure everybody stays lawful. And hopefully the confusion about who the just authority is will be sorted out fairly quickly. Hopefully the people who are in positions where you're standing there with a gun, remember, lawful, personal responsibility, and accountability are the thing that rule the day. Don't be stupid. Don't act against your own self-interest. We are perfectly capable of getting through this particular filter in human social evolution just fine. We may need to do some reorganization of our social and political structures. That's perfectly possible. That doesn't mean that we have to be unlawful about it. So that's all I've got for you tonight, good people. As always, if you found the video informative or entertaining, and if you did, you know what to do. Guys, hit the like, hit the share, get the stuff out there. Natural law, personal responsibility. And one more thing before I go, keep this in mind. You have somewhere between 0 and 100% personal responsibility, every individual, the base unit of our civil society. 0 and 100% personal responsibility. That's for observing law. That's for maintaining your own needs and everything else. 100% personal responsibility. But every amount that you don't take for yourself, every bit of personal responsibility that you are not taking for yourself, is the fodder that is going to be used to justify the authority that will be used upon you. Whether it's lawful or legal or not, that's a different story. But that's where that tyranny comes from, is the lack of personal responsibility. So if you want to put an end to lawlessness, it begins with a revolution here in your mind and here in your heart, where you observe the natural law first and foremost, and you make that your responsibility, 100% your responsibility, and you enforce it to the extent that your courage and capability allow you to do. But you don't have to go out there and strap on a gun and be the law. Most of the time, all you have to do is go, homie, dog, you know that right. Amazingly enough, once our society is healthy, that's usually the most that you have to do to enforce natural law. Once again, thank you for joining me tonight. Hope you found the video informative or entertaining. If you did, you know what to do. I'll catch you next time. Until then, get out there, good people, and get growing.